Zephyr 9 Alpha pressed his crystalline hands against the viewing port of the research vessel Harmony's Edge and watched the blue-green world slowly rotate beneath them. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, with swirling white clouds and vast oceans that sparkled in the light of its yellow star. He had seen dozens of worlds like this, one during his career as a xenobiologist, but something about this particular planet made him feel uneasy. "Standard scan complete, sir," reported Navigation Officer Kell, his forearms moving gracefully across the control panels. The planet shows high biodiversity levels and numerous population centers scattered across the major landmasses. Captain Thane stood behind the command chair, his blue-scaled face showing the calm expression that had made him famous throughout the Galactic Council fleet. "Any signs of advanced technology?" "Primitive by our standards," Kell replied. "Radio waves, basic satellites, some kind of chemical propulsion system. They appear to be in the early stages of space exploration," Zephyr nodded to himself. This was exactly what he had expected when the Council assigned him to this mission. Another young species taking their first tentative steps into the galaxy, probably still fighting wars over resources and territory like most primitive civilizations. He had written reports on 43 different species, and they all followed the same predictable patterns. "Sir, we have an incoming vessel," announced Communications Officer Trix, her tentacles dancing across the sensor displays. "It's moving fast and using some kind of propulsion system we haven't seen before." Captain Thane frowned. "Impossible. Our scans showed they only have basic rocket technology." "The vessel is definitely from the planet, sir, but it's not following any flight pattern in our databases. It keeps changing direction in ways that make no sense." Zephyr moved to the sensor station and studied the readings. The alien craft was small, maybe large enough for 2 or 3 beings, but it moved with an agility that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Every time their computers tried to predict its next move, the vessel would suddenly change course and appear somewhere else entirely. "It's like they're playing with us," Trix whispered, her voice filled with confusion. "Bring us to standard diplomatic distance," Captain Thane ordered, "and prepare the translation protocols. We'll follow first contact procedures exactly as the Council requires." The alien vessel stopped its erratic movements and slowly approached the much larger research ship. As it drew closer, Zephyr could see that it was built with clean lines and efficient design, not the crude construction he expected from a primitive species. The craft docked with their ship using a docking system that perfectly matched their own, despite the fact that the two species had never met before. "How did they know our docking specifications?" Kell asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Lucky guess," Captain Thane replied, but Zephyr could hear the uncertainty in his voice. The airlock cycled open and 3 beings walked into the diplomatic bay. They were bipedal, roughly the same height as Zephyr, with pale skin and dark hair. Their eyes were positioned in the front of their heads like predators, but they moved with the calm confidence of creatures who had never known fear. The first one stepped forward and spoke in a language that sounded harsh and complex. "Greetings. I am Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth Space Defense Force. We have been monitoring your presence in our system for the past 72 hours. Zephyr felt a chill run through his crystalline form. They had been watching them for 3 days without being detected by their sensors. How was that possible? The translation device quickly processed the alien language and began converting it into standard galactic. Jake Morrison smiled, showing white teeth that looked designed for tearing flesh. "We've prepared a delegation to meet with you. They should arrive within the hour." "How did you learn our language so quickly?" Zephyr asked, unable to hide his amazement. Jake's smile widened. "We've been listening to your communications since you entered our solar system. Dr. Rodriguez is quite good with languages. He's already figured out the basic structure of your speech patterns." Captain Thane stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. "I am Captain Thane of the Galactic Council research vessel Harmony's Edge. We come in peace to welcome your species to the greater galactic community." "We appreciate that," Jake replied. "Though we should probably mention that we've been aware of the galactic community for some time now. We've been monitoring your communications networks and studying your various species through long-range observation. Zephyr felt his world shifting beneath him. This was not how first contact was supposed to proceed. Primitive species were supposed to be awed by their first glimpse of galactic civilization, not calmly discussing how they had been spying on them for years. The hour passed quickly, and soon another group of humans arrived. They were led by a female who introduced herself as Ambassador Lisa Turner. She was accompanied by Dr. Ben Rodriguez, a thin man with intelligent eyes, and Colonel Steve Patterson, whose bearing suggested military training. "Welcome to our system," Lisa said, her voice warm but professional. "We've prepared some gifts to share with you as a token of our friendship." The humans presented them with various items, books written in their language, recordings of their music, and samples of their food. Each gift was simple but revealed layers of complexity that surprised Zephyr. The books showed advanced mathematical concepts, the music demonstrated sophisticated understanding of harmony and rhythm, and the food had been prepared using techniques that required precise knowledge of chemistry. "Your species shows remarkable development for such a young civilization," Captain Thane observed. "We've had some advantages," Dr. Rodriguez replied. "Our planet has been quite challenging to live on. We've had to adapt quickly or die out." "What kind of challenges?" Zephyr asked. Colonel Patterson answered. "Wars, natural disasters, climate changes, predators, diseases. Our world has been trying to kill us for thousands of years. We've learned to be very good at surviving," Lisa Turner smiled. "We've also learned to be very good at solving problems. When you're constantly facing extinction, you develop certain skills." As the meeting continued, Zephyr found himself studying the humans more carefully. They asked probing questions about galactic politics, trade routes, and military capabilities. Their questions revealed a deep understanding of how civilizations interacted on a galactic scale, knowledge that should have been impossible for a species that had never left their own solar system. "How do you know so much about galactic affairs?" Zephyr finally asked. "We've been preparing for this day for a long time," Lisa replied. "We knew eventually we would meet other species, so we've been studying everything we could detect about your various civilizations." "But you've never traveled beyond your own system," Captain Thane protested. "That's true," Jake Morrison said. "But we've been watching and listening for decades. We've learned quite a bit about your species, your technology, and your weaknesses." The word weaknesses sent another chill through Zephyr's crystalline form. Most species talked about strengths and capabilities during first contact. Only predators thought in terms of weaknesses. As the diplomatic session ended and the humans prepared to return to their ship, Zephyr realized that everything he thought he knew about primitive species was wrong. These humans were not the simple, naive creatures he had expected to encounter. They were something else entirely, something that had been quietly studying the galaxy while remaining hidden in their small system. "What did you think of them?" Captain Thane asked as they watched the human vessel depart. Zephyr watched the small ship disappear into the darkness of space, moving with the same unpredictable pattern that had confused their sensors earlier. "I think," he said slowly, "that we may have made a very serious mistake in assuming they were primitive." Dr. Ben Rodriguez stood in the ship's laboratory, speaking fluent Viridian crystal speech to Zephyr 9 Alpha. The human had learned the complex language in just 6 hours, something that should have taken months for any other species. His pronunciation was perfect, and he understood nuances that even experienced translators often missed. "How is this possible?" Zephyr asked, his crystalline form flickering with amazement. "Your brain structure should not be capable of processing our harmonic frequencies so quickly." Ben smiled and switched back to his own language. "Human brains are very adaptable. We've had to learn fast throughout our history. Those who couldn't adapt quickly usually didn't survive long enough to pass on their genes." Zephyr ran another biological scan on the human, studying the results with growing concern. The readings showed muscle density that was 3 times higher than any other sapient species in the galaxy. Ben's cardiovascular system was designed for sustained physical activity, with a heart that could pump blood efficiently even under extreme stress. His bone structure was dense and strong, built to withstand impacts that would shatter the skeletons of most galactic citizens. Your species appears to be built for violence, Zephyr observed. We're built for survival, Ben corrected. Sometimes. That requires violence, but we also cooperate better than most species. We had to learn to work together to survive on our world. Captain Thane entered the laboratory, followed by Ambassador Lisa Turner and Colonel Patterson. The captain had requested a full cultural exchange session to better understand human society and values. We've prepared some examples of human culture for you to study, Lisa said, activating a portable display device. We thought you might find our art and literature interesting. The first images showed human paintings and sculptures. Zephyr expected to see the peaceful, harmonious art that most civilized species created. Instead, he found himself looking at dramatic scenes of conflict, struggle, and triumph. The humans had created beautiful works that celebrated violence and warfare alongside themes of love and peace. This painting shows the Battle of Gettysburg, Lisa explained, pointing to a scene of humans fighting each other with primitive weapons. Over 50,000 casualties in 3 days. It was one of the turning points in our Civil War. Civil War? Zephyr asked. You fought among yourselves? We've fought hundreds of wars throughout our history, Colonel Patterson said matter-of-factly. Sometimes for resources, sometimes for territory, sometimes for ideas. Fighting has always been part of human nature. Dr. Rodriguez activated another display showing human literature. These are some of our greatest stories. They usually involve someone facing impossible odds and refusing to give up. Zephyr read through the translated texts, finding tales of humans battling monsters, surviving disasters, and overcoming enemies through determination and cleverness. Every story seemed to celebrate the idea that humans would never surrender, no matter how hopeless their situation appeared. Do you have any stories about peaceful resolution? Zephyr asked. Of course, Lisa replied. But even those usually involve someone fighting against injustice or oppression. Peace, for humans, is something that must be earned and defended. Captain Thane studied a display showing human recreational activities. His scaled face showed confusion as he watched humans jumping from aircraft, climbing dangerous mountains, and fighting each other in organized competitions. These activities appear extremely dangerous, he observed. Why do humans engage in them voluntarily? We call them extreme sports, Ben explained. Humans need challenge and excitement. A life without risk or danger feels empty to us. The displays showed humans racing vehicles at incredible speeds, diving into deep oceans, and climbing frozen waterfalls. Each activity carried a significant risk of injury or death, yet humans participated in them for entertainment. On my world, we spend our lives trying to avoid danger, Zephyr said. You seem to seek it out. Danger makes us stronger, Colonel Patterson replied. Every challenge we face teaches us something new about ourselves and our capabilities. Chen, the human engineer who had been working with the ship's technical team, entered the laboratory with a report. She had spent the morning analyzing the vessel's systems and had identified 17 ways to improve their efficiency. Your power distribution network is running at about 70% capacity, she told Captain Thane. With a few modifications, we could increase output by 30% and reduce energy waste by half. How could you understand our technology so quickly? The captain asked. Amy shrugged. Human engineers are trained to work with incomplete information. We're used to fixing things that are broken, improving systems that don't work well, and making do with whatever resources we have available. But you've never seen our technology before, Zephyr protested. The principles are the same, Amy replied. Energy has to flow efficiently, waste heat needs to be managed, and systems need redundancy in case of failure. These are universal engineering concepts. She showed them her proposed modifications, explaining how human engineering principles could be applied to alien technology. Her suggestions were practical and elegant, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of how complex systems worked. "Your species seems to excel at adaptation," Captain Thane observed. "We've had to," Lisa said. "Earth is not a gentle world. Our climate changes rapidly, our weather can be violent, and we share our planet with creatures that are bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than we are." "How did you become the dominant species?" Zephyr asked. "We learned to think faster than the things trying to kill us," Colonel Patterson replied. "We developed tools, worked together, and never stopped trying to improve our situation." Ben activated another display showing human scientific achievements. "We've cured diseases that killed millions, built machines that let us fly, and developed weapons that can destroy entire cities. We've always been driven to push beyond our limitations." The displays showed human cities built in hostile environments, machines that could operate in extreme conditions, and technologies that had been developed specifically to overcome the challenges of their dangerous world. "Your species has been shaped by constant conflict," Zephyr realized. "Not just conflict," Lisa corrected. "Challenge. Every problem we faced has made us better at solving the next one. We've learned to see obstacles as opportunities to grow stronger." As the cultural exchange continued, Zephyr began to understand that humans were not just another species that had developed intelligence. They were something entirely different, forged by a world that had demanded constant adaptation and improvement. Their art celebrated struggle, their recreation involved danger, and their technology was designed to function in hostile environments. "What concerns me most," he confided to Captain Thane later, "is that they seem to enjoy challenges. Most species try to avoid problems, but humans actively seek them out." "That could be very dangerous," the captain agreed. "A species that welcomes conflict might not respect the peaceful nature of galactic civilization." Zephyr watched Amy Chun working with the engineering team, improving their technology with casual efficiency. He observed Dr. Rodriguez learning another alien language from the ship's database, mastering in hours what took others months. He saw Colonel Patterson studying their defensive systems with the calculating eye of someone who understood violence intimately. These humans were not just intelligent or adaptable. They were something that the galaxy had never encountered before, a species that had been shaped by constant danger into perfect survivors, and they seemed to find the entire experience exciting rather than terrifying. The emergency klaxon pierced through the ship's quiet atmosphere, jolting every crew member into immediate alertness. Zephyr 9 Alpha felt his crystalline form vibrate with the harsh sound as he rushed to the bridge alongside Captain Thane and the other senior officers. "Report," Captain Thane commanded, his forearms moving swiftly across the command console. Navigation Officer Kell's voice was strained with panic. "Massive asteroid detected on collision course with Research Station Alpha 7 in the Centauri system. Impact in 17 hours and 43 minutes. Zephyr accessed the data stream and felt his core temperature drop. The asteroid was enormous, nearly 2 kilometers in diameter, and its unusual metallic composition had made it invisible to standard detection systems until now. Research Station Alpha 7 housed 3,000 scientists and civilians from 12 different species. "Can the station evacuate in time?" Captain Thane asked. "Negative, sir. Their transport capacity is limited to 400 beings per trip, and they would need at least 6 runs to evacuate everyone safely." Communications Officer Trix looked up from her station, her tentacles trembling with distress. "The station has confirmed the impact prediction. They're requesting immediate assistance." Captain Thane studied the tactical display, his scaled face showing the grim acceptance that Zephyr had seen on countless worlds when faced with inevitable tragedy. "Begin calculating evacuation priorities. We'll save who we can." Around the bridge, the various alien crew members began following their species' traditional protocols for dealing with unavoidable death. The Viridian crystal beings started their harmonic meditation rituals, their forms flickering with soft light as they prepared to accept the coming loss. The Corvaxians began composing farewell messages to their families, Their multiple arms moving gracefully across personal communication devices, the humans reacted completely differently. Within seconds of learning about the crisis, Jake Morrison had gathered Dr. Rodriguez, Amy Chun, and Colonel Patterson in a tight group near the navigation station. Their voices were low and urgent, but there was no sign of panic or resignation in their behavior. "What's the asteroid's composition?" Amy asked, her fingers dancing across a portable scanner. "Metallic alloy, density approximately 8.7, Cal replied, clearly confused by the human's interest in technical details during a crisis. "Mining laser specifications?" Dr. Rodriguez inquired. "Class 4 industrial cutters, maximum range 12,000 kilometers, Trix answered automatically. Colonel Patterson studied the tactical display. "Ship's power output?" "Standard research vessel configuration, approximately 42 terawatts maximum," Captain Thane replied, his tone suggesting he thought the humans were asking meaningless questions. Jake Morrison looked up from the group. "Discussion. We can deflect it." The bridge fell silent. Even the Viridian meditation chants stopped as every crew member turned to stare at the humans. "Impossible," Captain Thane said flatly. "The energy requirements alone would exceed our ship's capacity by a factor of 10. Not if we redistribute power from all non-essential systems," Amy replied, her mind clearly working through complex calculations. "We shut down life support in unused sections, disable artificial gravity in cargo holds, and reroute power from the computer cores," Dr. Rodriguez nodded. "We overload the mining lasers beyond their safety specifications. The risk of catastrophic failure is approximately 60%, but the potential to alter the asteroid's trajectory is mathematically viable." Zephyr felt his crystalline form flicker with horror. "You're talking about risking everyone's lives on a plan that will probably fail." "We're talking about trying to save 3,000 lives instead of just accepting their deaths," Colonel Patterson replied calmly. "The plan is too dangerous," Captain Thane protested. "We could lose this ship and everyone aboard it." "So we do nothing and let them die?" Jake asked, his voice carrying an edge that made several crew members step back involuntarily. "We evacuate who we can," the captain replied. "It's the logical choice." Amy Chun was already moving toward the engineering section. "Logic says we should try everything possible before accepting failure." "This is madness," Zephyr whispered to communication. "Officer Trix, they're willing to risk certain death on an uncertain plan." "Humans don't think like us," Dr. Rodriguez said, apparently having overheard the comment. "We have a concept called calculated risk. We weigh the potential outcomes and choose action over inaction even when the chances of success are low." "But why?" Zephyr asked. "Why not accept the tragedy and save yourselves?" "Because that's not who we are," Colonel Patterson replied simply. "Humans don't surrender. We fight until the last possible moment, even when the situation seems hopeless." The next 14 hours became a testament to human determination and ingenuity. Amy Chun worked with the engineering team to modify the ship's power distribution system, pushing the vessel's capabilities far beyond its design specifications. She rerouted energy flows through pathways that had never been intended for such loads, manually bypassed safety systems that existed to prevent catastrophic overloads, and performed repairs in areas of the ship where the radiation levels would have been lethal to most species. Dr. Rodriguez coordinated the complex calculations needed to determine the exact point where the laser strikes would have maximum effect on the asteroid's trajectory. He worked without rest, checking and rechecking his mathematics while accounting for variables that most species would have considered impossible to predict. Jake Morrison took control of the ship's navigation systems, positioning the vessel at precisely the right distance and angle to maximize the effectiveness of their improvised weapon. His piloting skills allowed him to maintain perfect positioning despite the enormous gravitational forces generated by the asteroid's mass. Colonel Patterson managed the overall operation, coordinating the efforts of both human and alien crew members with the efficiency of someone who had spent his life preparing for impossible situations. He monitored system performance, made real-time adjustments to the plan, and kept everyone focused on their specific tasks. The alien crew members watched in amazement as the humans worked tirelessly through the crisis, while other species would have been paralyzed by the stress and uncertainty. The humans seemed to thrive under pressure. They made decisions quickly, adapted to changing conditions instantly, and never showed any sign of giving up. They're actually enjoying this, Zephyr observed to Captain Thane as they watched Amy Chun crawling through a maintenance tunnel to repair a damaged power coupling. "I think you're right," the captain replied, his voice filled with disbelief. "They seem more alive during this crisis than they did during our peaceful cultural exchange." With 2 hours remaining before impact, the modified laser array was ready. The ship's power systems were running at 130% of normal capacity, well beyond the red line safety margins. Warning lights flashed throughout the vessel, and the constant hum of overloaded systems filled the air. "Beginning laser sequence," Amy announced from the engineering station. The ship's entire power grid focused on the mining lasers as they fired continuous beams at the asteroid's surface. The energy output was so intense that several monitoring systems shut down to prevent damage, and the ship's hull began to show stress fractures from the enormous power demands. For 6 hours, the humans maintained the laser bombardment, manually adjusting the targeting systems as the asteroid's surface composition changed under the intense heat. They worked in shifts, with each team member taking turns at the controls while the others monitored systems and made repairs. When the lasers finally shut down, the ship's engines were severely damaged, half the power systems were offline, and the entire vessel was barely functional. But the asteroid's trajectory had been altered by exactly 2.3 degrees, just enough to miss Research Station Alpha 7 by a margin of 400 kilometers. The humans showed no signs of celebration. Instead, they immediately began working on repairs and analyzing what had gone wrong during the operation so they could improve their performance in the future. "How did you know it would work?" Zephyr asked Jake Morrison as they watched the asteroid pass harmlessly by the research station. "We didn't," Jake replied. "But we knew that not trying would definitely result in failure. Sometimes the only choice is to act, even when success seems impossible." Zephyr realized that he had just witnessed something that no other species in the galaxy could have accomplished. Not because humans were stronger or smarter, but because they refused to accept defeat even when faced with impossible odds. The damaged research vessel limped through space toward the nearest repair station, its engines sputtering and power systems failing intermittently. Zephyr 9 Alpha watched the engineering teams work around the clock to keep their ship functioning. Knowing that they were still days away from proper facilities, the tranquil journey was shattered when Communications Officer Trix announced the detection of an approaching vessel. "Unknown ship on intercept course, configuration matches hegemony. Military design." Captain Thane's scaled face darkened with concern. The hegemony was a militaristic empire that had been expanding aggressively across the galaxy for decades, conquering or enslaving every species they encountered. Their technology was far superior to anything the research vessel possessed, and their reputation for violence was legendary. "Communications incoming," Trix reported, her tentacles trembling with fear. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of War Prime Vex, a massive being with armored skin and glowing red eyes. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "Research vessel, you will surrender immediately and prepare for boarding. Your ship and crew are now property of the hegemony." Captain Thane stood straighter, trying to maintain his dignity despite knowing how hopeless their situation was. "This is a neutral research vessel operating under Galactic Council authority. We demand safe passage." War Prime Vex's laugh was harsh and mechanical. "The Galactic Council has no authority here. You have 60 seconds to comply before we destroy your ship." Around the bridge, the alien crew members began preparing for capture or death. The Viridian crystal beings started their final meditation. Rituals, their forms flickering with resigned acceptance. The Kovaxians began erasing sensitive data from their personal devices. Knowing that resistance was futile, Zephyr watched the humans huddle together near the navigation station, their voices low and urgent. Unlike every other species on the ship, they showed no signs of fear or resignation. Instead, they seemed to be planning something. Jake Morrison approached Captain Thane with a determined expression. "We want to fight back." "Fight back?" the captain repeated, his voice filled with disbelief. "With what? Their ship has military-grade weapons and armor. We have mining lasers and scientific equipment. We have something they don't," Colonel Patterson said, joining the conversation. "We have the element of surprise and the willingness to use it." Dr. Rodriguez was already studying the sensor readings of the hegemony vessel. Standard military configuration, crew complement approximately 200. Weapon systems designed for conventional warfare against civilized opponents. "Civilized opponents don't fight the way humans do," Amy Chun added, her fingers dancing across her portable scanner. "They expect their enemies to follow predictable military doctrines." Captain Thane stared at the humans in amazement. "You actually think you can defeat a hegemony warship with a damaged research vessel?" "We think we can make them regret attacking." "U.S.," Jake replied calmly. The humans spread out across the bridge, each taking control of different systems. Jake Morrison moved to the helm, his hands finding the navigation controls with practiced ease. Amy Chun began rerouting power systems, creating false readings that would confuse the enemy sensors. Dr. Rodriguez opened a communication channel to the hegemony ship, while Colonel Patterson studied the tactical display with the calculating. "Gaze of a predator, what are you doing?" Zephyr asked, his crystalline form flickering with confusion. "Something we call pack hunting," Colonel Patterson replied without looking up from his display. "We're going to coordinate our attacks, use misdirection and psychological warfare to overcome a superior opponent." Lisa Turner's voice came through the communication channel, calm and professional as she spoke to War Prime Vex. "We're prepared to surrender, but we need a few minutes to secure our classified research data." "You have 5 minutes," the hegemony commander replied, his tone suggesting he was enjoying the humans' apparent fear, while Lisa kept the enemy distracted with negotiations. The other humans worked with deadly efficiency. Amy Chun used the ship's scientific equipment to create sensor ghosts that made their single vessel appear to be multiple ships. Jake Morrison began executing flight maneuvers that defied standard tactical doctrine, moving in patterns that confused the hegemony targeting systems. Dr. Rodriguez analyzed the enemy commander's speech patterns and psychological profile, identifying weaknesses in his personality that could be exploited. Colonel Patterson coordinated the improvised attack, turning the research vessel's scientific instruments into weapons. "They're not following any known military strategy," Zephyr observed, watching the humans work with fascination and terror. "That's the point," Jake replied, his voice completely calm despite the mortal danger they faced. "If you fight the way your enemy expects, you lose. If you fight in ways they've never seen before, you have a chance." The hegemony ship moved closer, confident in its superior firepower and armor. War Prime Vex had fought dozens of battles against various species, and they all followed the same predictable patterns. They would attempt to flee, then surrender when cornered, then beg for mercy before being destroyed or enslaved. The humans did none of these things. Instead, they turned their ship's geological survey equipment into a weapon that fired concentrated bursts of gravitational energy. They used their atmospheric processors to create electromagnetic interference that blinded the enemy sensors. They converted their mining drones into guided missiles that swarmed the hegemony vessel from multiple directions, but the most effective weapon was their psychological warfare. Dr. Rodriguez had identified War Prime Vex as a being who derived pleasure from dominating weaker opponents. The humans used this knowledge against him, broadcasting false surrender messages that were immediately followed by devastating attacks. "Impossible," War Prime Vex snarled as his ship's shields flickered under the unexpected assault. "You're using civilian equipment against military-grade weapons." "We're using our imagination," Lisa replied sweetly. "Something your species seems to have forgotten." The battle lasted less than 30 minutes, but it felt like hours to the watching alien crew. The humans fought with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic, anticipating each other's moves and adapting their tactics in real time. They used every advantage they could find, no matter how small or unconventional. When the hegemony ship's main weapons were disabled by a swarm of converted mining drones, War Prime Vex made a crucial mistake. He ordered his ship to ram the research vessel, expecting to destroy both ships rather than accept defeat. Jake Morrison had been waiting for exactly this kind of desperate move. He executed a maneuver that no sane pilot would attempt, using the ship's damaged engines to spin the research vessel around the enemy ship's trajectory while Amy Chun overloaded their remaining systems to create a massive electromagnetic pulse. The hegemony ship's electronics failed completely, leaving it drifting helplessly in space. War Prime Vex found himself aboard a powerless vessel, facing an enemy that had defeated him using nothing but creativity and determination. "This is not possible," he whispered, his voice filled with something that might have been fear. "You are a research vessel. You have no weapons, no military training, no combat experience." "We have something better," Colonel Patterson replied through the communication channel. "We have the will to fight and the intelligence to adapt. Your technology is impressive, but it can't compensate for tactical stupidity." The alien crew members stared at the humans in stunned silence. They had just witnessed something that should have been impossible: a civilian research vessel defeating a military warship through superior tactics and unconventional thinking. "How did you know what to do?" Zephyr asked Jake Morrison as they watched the disabled hegemony ship drift away. "We didn't," Jake replied. "We made it up as we went along." That's what humans do when we're faced with impossible odds. We improvise. We adapt, and we never give up. Zephyr realized that he had just seen something that no other species in the galaxy could have accomplished. The humans had not just survived an encounter with the hegemony, they had won by fighting in ways that their enemies could never have predicted or prepared for. "You're not just survivors," he said quietly. "You're strategic predators who can instantly shift from cooperation to coordinated lethality when threatened." "We're whatever the situation requires us to be," Colonel Patterson replied. "That's the key to survival in a dangerous universe." The massive chambers of the Galactic Council hummed with the voices of hundreds of species as representatives from across the galaxy gathered to hear the report about humanity. Zephyr 9 Alpha stood before the assembled delegates, his crystalline form flickering nervously as he prepared to deliver findings that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about civilization. Captain Thane sat in the witness section alongside the human delegation, his scaled face showing the strain of the past few weeks. The defeated hegemony vessel had been recovered by Council forces, and War Prime Vex's testimony about his encounter with the research ship had sent shockwaves through the military establishment. "The species known as humans appears to be fundamentally different from any previously encountered civilization," Zephyr began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. "They do not fit into our established categories of primitive, developing, or advanced species." Counselor Prime Eldest raised one of his ancient limbs, his voice carrying the authority of millions of years of experience. "Surely you exaggerate, xenobiologist Zephyr. All species follow predictable patterns of development. Those capable of joining galactic civilization must be peaceful and cooperative by nature." "With respect, Counselor Prime Eldest, that assumption may be incorrect," Zephyr replied. "Humans have achieved technological advancement while maintaining what can only be described as a warrior culture." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembly. The very foundation of galactic civilization was built on the principle that violent species destroyed themselves before achieving space travel. Only peaceful, cooperative beings could develop the technology and wisdom needed for interstellar society. "Present your evidence," commanded Counselor Prime Eldest. Zephyr activated his holographic display, showing images of human history and culture. "Humans have fought over 14,000 wars in their recorded history. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet multiple times over. Yet simultaneously, they have created art, music, literature, and scientific achievements that rival any species in the galaxy. The assembly watched in stunned silence as the displays showed human cities built in hostile environments, machines that could function under extreme conditions, and technologies that had emerged directly from military research. The images painted a picture of a species that had been shaped by constant conflict while somehow avoiding self-destruction. "This is impossible," declared Counselor Vex 9 of the Corvaxian delegation. "Species that embrace violence cannot achieve the cooperation necessary for advanced civilization." Dr. Ben Rodriguez stood from the human delegation section, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the agitation of the alien representatives. "May I address the council?" Counselor Prime Eldest granted permission, clearly curious to hear the human perspective. "Violence and cooperation are not mutually exclusive for humans," Dr. Rodriguez explained. "We have learned to compete and collaborate simultaneously. Our wars have driven technological innovation while our need for survival has forced us to work together." He activated his own display, showing examples of human achievements that had emerged from military necessity. "Our communications technology was developed for battlefield coordination. Our medical advances came from treating wounded soldiers. Our space program began as a way to deliver weapons, but evolved into exploration and discovery." The alien representatives struggled to comprehend this paradox. In their experience, species were either violent and self-destructive or peaceful and cooperative. The idea that a civilization could be both simultaneously challenged their fundamental understanding of intelligence and social development. "Your species appears to view conflict as a natural state," observed Counselor Thane Prime of the Viridian Collective. "Conflict is a tool for growth," Dr. Rodriguez replied. "We compete to become stronger, we fight to test our limits, and we struggle to overcome our weaknesses. This process has made us adaptable and resilient." Counselor Prime Eldest's ancient eyes studied the human delegation with growing unease. "You speak of warfare as if it were beneficial." "It has been for us," Colonel Patterson said, standing to address the council. "Every challenge we have faced has taught us something valuable. Every enemy we have defeated has shown us our own capabilities." The chamber erupted in concerned chatter as the implications began to sink in. The humans were not just another species seeking membership in galactic civilization. They were something entirely new, a civilization that had weaponized conflict itself as a means of advancement. "We cannot allow a violent species to join the galactic community," declared Counselor Vex 9. "They would destabilize the peace we have maintained for millennia." "With respect," Ambassador Lisa Turner said, rising from her seat, "we are not asking for permission. We are informing you of our existence and our intentions." The arrogance of the statement sent shockwaves through the assembly. No species had ever addressed the council with such directness, especially not a newly discovered civilization. "You dare to threaten the Galactic Council?" Counselor Prime Eldest demanded. "We are not threatening anyone," Lisa replied calmly. "We are simply stating facts. Humans will continue to explore the galaxy whether you approve or not. The question is whether you prefer us as allies or as an unknown factor." To demonstrate her point, Lisa activated a holographic display showing the recent battle with the hegemony vessel. The assembled delegates watched in horror as a civilian research ship defeated a military warship using tactics that defied every principle of civilized warfare. "This is barbarism," whispered Counselor Thane Prime. "This is effectiveness," Colonel Patterson corrected. "We used the resources available to us and adapted our strategy to overcome a superior opponent. That is how humans survive." The Council's military advisor, General Kron 7, stood to address the assembly. "If this footage is accurate, the humans represent a significant threat to galactic security. Their unconventional tactics and willingness to fight against impossible odds make them unpredictable and dangerous, or valuable allies," Dr. Rodriguez pointed out. The hegemony has been expanding unchecked for decades because no species has been willing or able to resist them effectively. We stopped one of their ships with a research vessel. The truth of this statement was undeniable. The hegemony had conquered 17 star systems in the past century, and the Council had been powerless to stop them. The idea that these humans might be capable of resisting the Empire's expansion was both terrifying and hopeful. "We propose a demonstration," Lisa announced, her voice cutting through the heated debates. "Choose your finest warrior, your most skilled fighter, and we will show you what humans are capable of in personal combat." The challenge sent another wave of shock through the assembly. The Council's champion was Titan Prime Kale, a genetically perfect warrior who stood 3 meters tall and possessed strength that could crush stone. No challenger had ever lasted more than seconds against him. "You cannot be serious," Counselor Prime Eldest said. "We are completely serious," Lisa replied. "If we are to be judged by our nature, let us demonstrate that nature honestly." The demonstration took place in the Council's arena, with thousands of delegates watching as Lisa Turner faced Titan Prime Kale. The contrast was stark, the massive, armored warrior against the small, seemingly fragile human female. Kale attacked with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. His movements were powerful and direct, designed to overwhelm opponents through sheer force. Lisa responded with techniques that the galaxy had never seen before. She used Kale's size and strength against him, turning his own momentum into a weapon. She exploited his expectations, appearing vulnerable while positioning herself for devastating counterattacks. She adapted instantly to his fighting style, learning and evolving her tactics in real time. The battle lasted less than 5 minutes, but it demonstrated everything the Council needed to know about human nature. Lisa did not just defeat Kale. She did so while making it look effortless. Her victory was not achieved through superior strength or technology, but through superior understanding of conflict itself. "How is this possible?" Counselor Prime Eldest asked, his ancient voice filled with disbelief. "Every human learns to fight," Colonel Patterson explained. "Not just physical combat, but mental and emotional warfare. We compete with each other. From childhood, always striving to become stronger, smarter, and more capable." The assembled delegates finally began to understand what they were dealing with. Humans were not just another species seeking to join galactic civilization. They were apex predators who had found their way to the stars, bringing with them all the skills and instincts that had made them masters of their violent world. "What do you want from us?" Counselor Prime Eldest asked quietly. "Nothing," Lisa replied. "We want to explore the galaxy, meet other species, and find our place among the stars. Whether that place is as friends or as something else entirely depends on how we are received." The message was clear. The galaxy could welcome humanity as allies and partners, or it could face them as competitors and potential enemies. Either way, the age of human expansion had begun, and the universe would never be the same. The massive hegemony invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their dark ships blotting out the stars like a swarm of metal locusts. War Master Zek stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominator, his scarred face showing satisfaction as he studied the tactical displays showing the human homeworld. 300 vessels against one primitive planet, he said to his officers. "This will be the quickest conquest in hegemony history." Zephyr 9 Alpha watched the fleet's approach from the observation deck of the Galactic Council vessel that had brought him back to Earth with a warning. The crystal being had expected to find a world in panic, with desperate preparations for a hopeless last stand. Instead, he had discovered something that defied all logic. The humans were ready. General Kate Sullivan stood in the command center deep beneath the mountains of North America, her calm demeanor unchanged, despite the overwhelming force approaching her world. Around her, human officers worked with the quiet efficiency of people who had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. "Fleet composition confirmed," reported Colonel Danny Wright from the tactical station. "Standard hegemony assault. Formation, approximately 300 vessels including 12 dreadnoughts. Defensive positions?" General Sullivan asked. "All stations report ready?" Asteroid belt installations are online, lunar bases are operational, and the orbital platforms are fully armed. Zephyr felt confusion ripple through his crystalline form. The humans had built a military infrastructure throughout their entire solar system, something that should have taken centuries to complete. When had they found the time to construct such extensive defenses? "We've been building this for 50 years, Commander Tony Mitchell explained, apparently noticing Zephyr's confusion. "Ever since we first detected radio signals from other star systems, we knew eventually we would meet other species. We hoped for peace, but we prepared for war." The Hegemony fleet moved deeper into the system, their sensors detecting the primitive technology they expected to find. War Master Zex smiled as his tactical officers reported minimal defensive capabilities and outdated weapon systems. "Begin the assault," he ordered. "Destroy their orbital installations first, then commence planetary bombardment." The first wave of Hegemony fighters swept toward Earth's moon, expecting to overwhelm the small defensive stations with ease. Instead, they found themselves flying into a carefully prepared trap. The human lunar bases had been designed to look weak and vulnerable while hiding their true capabilities. When the enemy fighters came within range, the moon's surface erupted, with weapons that the Hegemony had never seen before. The humans had taken their mining equipment and converted it into siege weapons that could punch through starship armor. "Impossible," War Master Zex snarled as his first wave was decimated. "They're using industrial equipment as weapons." "Human engineering is very adaptable," Commander Mitchell said through the communication channel that he had somehow tapped into. "We've learned to make weapons out of whatever materials we have available." The battle for Earth became a demonstration of everything that made humans unique in the galaxy. They fought with weapons that defied conventional military doctrine, used tactics that had never been seen before, and showed a coordination that seemed almost telepathic. When the Hegemony fleet tried to establish orbital superiority, they found themselves facing asteroid bases that had been hollowed out and converted into massive weapon platforms. The humans had spent decades moving rocks into strategic positions, creating a defensive network that turned the entire solar system into a fortress. "They've weaponized their entire star system," reported the Hegemony tactical officer, his voice filled with disbelief. "Then we destroy everything," War Master Zex replied. "Bring the fleet to full attack formation." The humans responded to the escalating threat by revealing capabilities that shocked even Zephyr. They had hidden weapons throughout the asteroid belt that could accelerate chunks of rock to relativistic speeds, turning ordinary meteors into planet-killing projectiles. They had converted their space stations into guided missiles, sacrificing their own infrastructure to damage enemy vessels. Commander Mitchell led a squadron of human fighters in a desperate assault on the Hegemony flagship. His ships were smaller and less advanced than the enemy fighters, but they moved with unpredictable patterns that confused the alien targeting systems. The humans flew their craft like extensions of their own bodies, executing maneuvers that should have been impossible. "They're not following standard fighter tactics," the Hegemony flight commander reported. "They're fighting like individual predators instead of military formations." "Every human pilot learns to think independently," Commander Mitchell explained as his fighter dove through a gap in the enemy formation. "We don't follow rigid doctrine because rigid thinking gets you killed." The turning point came when Dr. Ben Rodriguez, monitoring enemy communications from Earth's surface, discovered a critical weakness in the Hegemony command structure. Their entire fleet was controlled by a central artificial intelligence that made decisions based on predictable military algorithms. "They're thinking like machines," he reported to General Sullivan. "They can't adapt to tactics they've never seen before." Within hours, the humans had developed new strategies specifically designed to exploit this weakness. They used psychological warfare to confuse the enemy AI, BROADCAST false information to disrupt enemy coordination, and attacked in ways that the computer could not predict or counter. The battle raged for 3 days, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The Hegemony fleet had superior numbers and technology, but the humans had something that proved more valuable: the absolute refusal to surrender, combined with the ability to adapt and evolve their tactics in real time. This is not how warfare is supposed to function, War Master Zek said as his fleet's tactical advantage steadily eroded. They're breaking every rule of civilized combat. We never agreed to follow your rules, General Sullivan replied through the communication channel. We fight to win, not to look civilized. The final assault came when the humans revealed their most devastating weapon, themselves. They had built ships designed to be piloted by humans in person, giving them a reaction time and adaptability that no artificial intelligence could match. These ships swarmed the hegemony vessels like angry insects, too small and fast to be effectively targeted, Commander. Mitchell's fighter squadron punched through the enemy defenses and reached the flagship Dominator. Their ships were damaged and their weapons nearly exhausted, but they pressed the attack with the determination that had defined their species since the beginning. Ramming speed, Commander Mitchell ordered as his fighters' engines failed. If we can't shoot them down, we'll take them with us. The sight of human pilots deliberately crashing their ships into enemy vessels sent shockwaves through the hegemony fleet. This was not the behavior of a civilized species, but of apex predators who would rather die than accept defeat. War Master Zex watched his fleet disintegrate around him, destroyed not by superior technology but by an enemy that fought with a ferocity he had never encountered. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a weapon, sacrificed their own lives without hesitation, and adapted their tactics faster than his forces could respond. Retreat, he finally ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. All ships, retreat to hyperspace. The surviving hegemony vessels fled Earth's solar system, carrying with them the knowledge that they had encountered something that the galaxy had never seen before. The humans had not just survived the assault, they had won by fighting in ways that redefined what warfare could be. Zephyr stood in the ruins of the human orbital stations, watching as the enemy fleet disappeared into hyperspace. The cost of victory had been enormous, with thousands of human lives lost and much of their space infrastructure destroyed. But the humans showed no signs of mourning or regret. How did you know you could win? He asked General Sullivan as they surveyed the damage. We didn't, she replied simply. But we knew that not fighting would definitely result in defeat. Sometimes the only choice is to act, even when victory seems impossible. As Zephyr prepared his final report to the Galactic Council, he realized that he had witnessed the birth of a new era. The humans had proven that they were not just another species seeking their place in the galaxy. They were apex predators who had found their way to the stars, bringing with them all the skills and instincts that had made them masters of their violent world. The galaxy now faced a choice: accept humanity as equals and allies, or risk facing them as enemies in a conflict that could reshape the entire structure of galactic civilization. Either way, the age of human expansion had begun, and the universe would never be the same. Zephyr's final words to the council were simple but profound. We have encountered not just a new species, but a new form of evolution. Humans are what happens when intelligence meets the will to survive at any cost. They are the galaxy's apex predators, and we must decide whether we wish to be their friends or their prey.